The story of what happened to Claire Donovan and her friends doesn't begin with their disappearance. It begins with a dare. It was late March, a week before the thaw, when Claire sat hunched over her laptop in a crowded university cafe. Around her, students rushed through midterms, but she had eyes only for the dozens of tabs open across her screen, grainy photographs of abandoned ships, news clippings about vanished planes, and one phrase repeated so often it felt like a curse: the Lake Michigan Triangle. Claire wasn't superstitious. She was a folklorist. But folklore has a strange way of turning rational people into believers, and that spring the legend had her in its grip. She was writing her graduate thesis on regional American triangles, the clusters of disappearances, paranormal sightings, and lore that spring up like weeds around certain patches of earth and sea. The Bermuda Triangle was too obvious, too overdone. But Lake Michigan? That was different. That was close. Her brother Ethan leaned against the back of her chair, smirking the way only an older brother can. "You're not actually going out there, are you?" Claire didn't look up. Field research. First-hand interviews. "I can't write this on recycled newspaper clippings." "You mean ghost stories?" "Folklore," she corrected. But even as she said it, she felt the pull, the way the locals spoke of the lake not as water, but as a living thing, something with moods and hungers. For every professor who dismissed the disappearances as accidents, there were fishermen who swore they'd seen lights under the surface, planes vanishing in a clear sky, and ships found abandoned with meals still warm on their tables. That night, she sent 2 messages that would change everything. The first was to Jonas Black, her friend since freshman year, a photography major with an unhealthy fascination for urban ruins. His reply came within seconds. "Tell me when and where. I'll bring the camera." The second was to Ethan. He hadn't signed up for adventure, but when it came to his little sister, he didn't have much of a choice. His reply was slower, reluctant, but final. "If you're going, I'm going. Somebody has to keep you alive." They left Chicago on a gray Friday morning in Ethan's beat-up Jeep, the sky low and heavy, spring trying and failing to arrive. The further north they drove, the more the suburbs gave way to forests and frozen fields, until the world narrowed to a 2-lane highway skirting the edge of the lake. Jonas sat in the back, fiddling with his camera gear, occasionally leaning forward to stick a lens out the window and capture the endless water. "Looks like it goes on forever," he muttered. "No horizon, just gray on gray." "That's Lake Michigan," Claire said. "Freshwater sea, 300 miles long. A third of all shipwrecks in America are buried under it." Ethan shot her a look. Comforting. She smiled faintly. "It gets better. The triangle runs from Ludington to Manitowoc to Benton Harbor. Planes, boats, whole crews. All gone." Jonas whistled. "And we're heading right into it?" "Exactly." The Jeep rattled into Manitowoc by dusk, the streets lined with shuttered shops and weather-worn diners. The lake stretched beyond the harbor, a flat expanse of pewter that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. At the dock, they met the ferry captain, a sun-creased man in his 60s named Hal Kessler. He wore a cap pulled low over his eyes and carried himself like someone who had spent more of his life on water than land. "You kids know what you're doing?" Hal asked, squinting at their backpacks and camera bags. "We're just doing research," Claire said. He laughed, but it wasn't warm. "Research? That's a fancy word for trouble. Folks around here don't go digging in the triangle. Not unless they're looking to stay there." Jonas grinned, but his grip on the camera tightened. "You believe in it?" Hal's face darkened. "I've seen enough not to joke. Compass spins like a drunk. Radio's dead. Fog when the forecast says clear. And the lights," his voice thinned as though the words themselves carried weight. "Blue, green, sometimes red, dancing under the surface, like lanterns carried by something that doesn't belong to this world." Ethan snorted, but Claire leaned forward. "And what happens if you follow them?" Hal didn't answer at first. He just stared at the water. Finally, he said, "You don't come back." That night, they stayed in a motel just outside town. The room smelled faintly of mildew and old smoke, but it was cheap, and the 3 of them spread maps across the bed, plotting their course. Claire traced a triangle with her finger. "Tomorrow we take the ferry across, then rent a small boat to Beaver Island. There's an old Coast Guard station there, abandoned since the 50s. Supposedly, they kept records of disappearances. Ethan frowned. And if they kept records, why haven't people already figured this out? Because most of them vanished too, she said quietly. The heater clicked on, filling the silence with a mechanical hum. Jonas adjusted his camera lens, catching Claire's reflection in the glass. She looked pale, tired, but her eyes burned with a determination that unsettled him. Later, as they drifted into uneasy sleep, Ethan woke to the sound of water sloshing against the window. But when he pulled back the curtain, the lake was miles away. What he saw instead made his chest tighten. A shadowy figure standing on the roadside, staring directly at their room. Its outline wavered, like heat rising from asphalt, and then, in a blink, it was gone. He told himself it was exhaustion, nothing more. But even as he lay back down, his pulse hammering in his ears, he couldn't shake Hal's words. The lake keeps what it takes. And somewhere deep inside him, Ethan already knew this trip wasn't just research. It was a door they were about to open, and once open, there would be no closing it again. Stories like this aren't just legends. They're warnings buried in plain sight. If you want more tales of the unexplained disappearances and the shadows history doesn't talk about, pause for just a second and subscribe. You won't want to miss where this is headed. Morning came gray and brittle. A low fog clung to the town, draping Manitowalk in a silence too heavy for a Saturday. Claire woke first, the motel clock blinking 6:12 in the half-dark. She slipped from bed, careful not to wake Ethan or Jonas, and padded to the window. The parking lot was empty except for their Jeep and Hal's truck near the dock. Beyond that, the lake stretched like a sheet of hammered steel. Not calm, never calm, but motionless in its own way, as though the waves rolled under some unseen command. Claire scribbled the image into her field journal. Lake feels alive. Not water, but presence. Oh, watching. By 7, they were packed and moving, lugging gear down the cracked sidewalk toward the ferry terminal. Jonas filmed everything, from the gulls circling overhead to the rust-streaked hull of the SS Badger. "Can't believe this thing still runs," Ethan muttered, eyeing the ship with skepticism. "She's a piece of history," Jonas countered, his camera sweeping across the lifeboats. Steam-powered. Last of her kind. "Last," Ethan echoed. "There's a reason ships don't last on this lake." Claire ignored them, busy scribbling notes. The Badger had ferried passengers across Lake Michigan since the 1950s, a steel giant that had outlived nearly every vessel of its era. Locals said she carried ghosts in her boiler room. Inside the terminal, they drew looks, outsiders with heavy backpacks and restless eyes. At the ticket counter, the clerk, a woman in her 40s with hollow cheeks, studied Claire's ID longer than necessary. "You sure you want to cross today?" she asked, voice flat. "Forecast says clear," Claire said. The woman didn't blink. "Forecast doesn't matter. Out there, weather changes in minutes. Fog can swallow a ship whole. You remember Flight 2501? Claire nodded. June 1950. Commercial airliner. 43 people. Disappeared over the lake. No wreckage, no bodies. The woman's lips pressed into a thin line. Some things don't want to be found. She slid the tickets across the counter without another word. On deck, the air was sharp and damp, biting through their jackets. The ship's horn bellowed, rattling Jonas's camera. He laughed nervously, steadying the lens. "Okay, tell me that doesn't sound like the opening shot of a horror movie." Ethan leaned against the railing, eyes scanning the horizon. "Remind me why we're doing this again." "Because no one else will," Claire said simply. The Badger pushed off, engines churning the harbor water into froth. As the shoreline receded, the fog seemed to grow thicker, knitting itself into walls that blurred sky from lake. Within an hour, Manitowalk was gone, swallowed by the gray. Claire flipped through her notes, narrating for Jonas's camera. The Lake Michigan Triangle is said to stretch between Ludington, Manitowalk, and Benton Harbor. Hundreds of cases. The Thomas Hume schooner vanished 1891. The Rosabelle overturned in 1921 with no crew aboard. The Northwest Flight 2501. Vanished midair. 43 lives lost. Correction, Ethan said grimly. 43 lives taken. Claire shot him a look, but Jonas grinned. I like it. Sets the mood. Halfway across, the compass app on Ethan's phone began to twitch. He frowned, tapping the screen. Signals jumping. Look at this. He held out. North spun to west, then east, then south, refusing to hold steady. Magnetic interference, Claire said quickly, though her tone lacked conviction. Interference from what? We're in the middle of the lake. Jonas zoomed the camera onto the compass, capturing every jitter. That's gold, he whispered. Moments later, the fog thickened without warning. 1 minute the horizon was visible. The next, the world closed in a seamless cocoon of white. The lake vanished. The sky vanished. Even the ship seemed to shrink, its deck reduced to a strip of steel floating in nothingness. Claire gripped the railing, pulse racing. She told herself it was natural. Fog was common this time of year. But the silence, it was wrong. No gulls, no waves, just the groan of the engine echoing in a void. Then Ethan stiffened. Do you hear that? They all went quiet. At first, Claire thought it was just her heartbeat. Then she heard it too, faint, distant, a sound like voices. Jonas raised the camera, slowly panning across the fog. Where is it coming from? The voices swelled, layered, and distorted, as though dozens of people spoke at once in a language that dissolved into static. A chill prickled Claire's skin. The captain's voice crackled over the loudspeaker. All passengers stay inside. Visibility's at 0. But none of them moved, because just then, Ethan pointed over the railing. There! Something glowed beneath the surface. Faint at first, then brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat. Blue-green, shifting, alive. The fog reflected it, casting eerie shadows across their faces. Claire's breath caught. Jonas, are you filming this? He didn't answer. He was already leaning over the rail, lens locked on the light. The glow swirled, spreading, splitting into smaller orbs that rose toward the surface like bubbles of fire. For an instant, it was beautiful. Then the orbs winked out all at once, leaving only the black water. The silence deepened. And then, impact. A hollow thud reverberated through the hull, strong enough to make the deck tremble. Passengers screamed inside. The captain's voice barked over speakers. Everyone off the deck! Now! Ethan yanked Claire's arm. Come on. But she couldn't look away from the water. For the briefest second, she thought she saw a shadow rising beneath the waves. Not a fish, not a log. Something vast, something with form, coiling just out of sight. It was gone before she could process it, the fog closing tighter around them. They stumbled into the cabin, hearts racing. Jonas checked his camera, face pale. It recorded, he whispered. I got it. Claire sank into a seat, hands trembling around her notebook. She forced herself to write. Lights beneath surface. Compass malfunction. Hull strike. Presence under ship. Ethan slammed his phone on the table. This is insane. That wasn't fog. That wasn't normal. What if Hal was right? What if this lake doesn't want us here? No one answered. Outside, the fog pressed against the windows like a living wall. The passengers sat in silence, clutching their belongings as if the lake might reach in and take them. The ship's horn sounded again, but this time it didn't echo. The sound seemed to vanish into the mist, swallowed whole. And for the first time since their journey began, Claire Donovan felt a sliver of doubt cut through her resolve. Because the lake wasn't just water. It was waiting. And it knew they were here. The fog didn't lift until the ferry scraped into Ludington's harbor. When the passengers finally disembarked, they did so in silence. Shoulders hunched, eyes darting at the water as though they expected it to reach after them. Claire, Ethan, and Jonas stood on the pier, pale from the crossing. The sun had returned, bright and sharp, but offered no comfort. What they'd seen couldn't be burned away by daylight. Still think this is just folklore? Ethan muttered. Claire avoided his eyes. We came here for evidence. We just got it. Evidence. He laughed bitterly. That was a warning. But Claire was already pulling out her maps, tracing the route north. From Ludington, they would rent a small fishing boat to Beaver Island, the center point of the triangle. Jonas slung his camera bag higher. If we turn back now, we'll have nothing but a story. If we keep going, we'll have proof. His hands shook, but his voice was steady. Ethan cursed under his breath, but he followed. He always did. By late afternoon, the three of them were crammed into a 30-foot fishing vessel captained by a wiry man named Ray, whose silence made Halcyon chatty. Ray barely spoke as he steered them north, his eyes never leaving the horizon. When Claire asked about the Coast Guard station on Beaver Island, he only said, "It's there, but you don't want to go." "Why not?" Jonas pressed. Ray's jaw worked, but he didn't answer. Eventually, he muttered, "Some doors don't need opening." They arrived as the sun began to dip, painting the lake in streaks of gold that only made it look more endless. Beaver Island loomed out of the water like a fortress of pine and rock, its shoreline jagged and cold. The abandoned Coast Guard station sat hunched near the harbor, windows gaping like hollow eyes. Ray refused to dock. He cut the engine 50 yards out, lowering the dinghy for them. "Last trip of the night," he said. "If you're not back by morning, you'll be staying." Ethan opened his mouth to argue, but Claire put a hand on his arm. "We'll be back." Ray didn't reply. He only watched as they rowed toward the island, his figure shrinking into the distance until the fog swallowed him whole. The Coast Guard station was worse up close, a hulking structure of brick and rotting wood. It leaned against the shoreline like a man too tired to stand. Its paint peeled in long strips, and the smell of mildew seeped from the cracks. Inside, the air was damp and stale, thick with dust that clung to their throats. Jonas clicked on his flashlight, sweeping it across rows of broken lockers and rusted bunks. "Looks like they just left," he whispered. Claire trailed her fingers across a row of peeling charts on the wall. They did. 1958, officially decommissioned. But the logs! She pulled open a desk drawer. This was swollen with damp. Inside lay stacks of water-warped paper, the ink faded but legible. She read aloud. July 12th. Fog rolled in without warning. Patrol Vessel 92 failed to return. Search aborted due to compass malfunction. Flipping through, she found another. August 3rd. Light sighted beneath surface. Crew reported orbs rising. Contact lost minutes later. Her hands trembled. These weren't myths. They were records. Jonas crouched by a filing cabinet, wrenching it open. Inside lay a smaller leather-bound logbook, its pages brittle. He flipped carefully until one entry stopped him cold. September 17th. Captain Reed authorized dive following reports of metallic object below. Divers radioed sighting of hallway of light. All contact lost. Reed ordered station closed within the month. Jonas looked up, face drained of color. Hallway of light. That's exactly what the diver, in Hal's story, said. Claire copied it into her notebook, her pen digging grooves into the paper. Hallway of light. Disappearances consistent. Station closure. Ethan kicked at a broken chair. So what does it mean? Aliens? Monsters? Or just a bunch of idiots chasing shadows? Claire turned on him, eyes blazing. Does it matter? They've vanished. And if we can prove this, if we can connect these records to what we saw on the ferry, then what? Ethan snapped. We'll vanish too? You saw that thing under the water. Claire, you felt it. Don't pretend you didn't. Silence fell. Only the groan of the old building filled it, the rafters shifting like bones. Then Jonas froze, his flashlight trembling. Did you hear that? They all went still. Somewhere deep in the building, a door creaked open. Ethan tightened his grip on the flashlight, jaw set. Probably just the wind. But Claire's skin prickled. The air had changed. Thicker, colder, as though something unseen had stepped into the room. They moved together, cautious, following the echo down a long hallway. At the end, a metal door hung ajar. Jonas pushed it open, revealing a basement stairwell choked with shadows. The smell hit first, damp earth, rust, and something faintly sweet like spoiled fruit. Claire descended first, her flashlight beam cutting across crumbling shelves. Boxes of old equipment lined the walls, but at the center of the room sat a steel locker, its door warped but still intact. Stenciled across it in faded paint, dive logs restricted. Ethan swore softly. This is insane. Jonas's hands shook as he forced a lock. The door screeched open, revealing waterproof binders, their plastic yellow with age. Claire tore one free, flipping it open. Inside were dive reports, some stamped classified. She read in a whisper. October 2nd. Diver 1 reports sensation of being pulled down by unseen current. Diver 2 confirms visual of figures in water. Contact terminated abruptly. Recovery attempts unsuccessful. The next entry. October 3rd. Multiple sonar echoes detected beneath vessel. Shapes too large to be fish. Movement consistent with structured formation. Possible craft? Report filed to Naval Intelligence. Claire's voice faltered. Naval Intelligence. Jonas leaned closer. So they knew. The government knew. Ethan snatched the binder, slamming it shut. Enough. We shouldn't even be reading this. But Claire's eyes burned with a terrible certainty. This isn't folklore. This is real. The triangle isn't a story. It's an active phenomenon. As if to punctuate her words, the building groaned again. Dust rained from the ceiling. Somewhere outside, the lake churned, waves slapping harder against the shore. Ethan grabbed her arm. We're leaving. Now. They hurried up the stairs, binders clutched to their chests. But when they burst outside, the lake had transformed. The sky had darkened, clouds boiling low over the water. The air smelled of ozone, sharp and metallic. Far offshore, faint blue lights flickered beneath the surface, rising, pulsing, circling like predators. Jonas lifted his camera, but his hands were shaking too hard to keep focus. They're back, he whispered. Claire stared, heart-hammering. For the first time, she wasn't sure whether she was witnessing discovery or doom. And behind her, in the darkness of the Coast Guard station, a door. The storm broke just after midnight. Ethan had argued to stay on Beaver Island until morning, but Claire insisted they return to the mainland before the weather worsened. If we wait, we'll lose the light, and everything we found will just sit there in that station, waiting for the next storm to swallow it. Reluctantly, they pushed off in their rented fishing boat, the logs sealed in waterproof bags, Jonas's camera rolling even as his hand shook. The waves slapped harder the further they drifted from shore, as though the lake itself resented their leaving. By the time Beaver Island was only a shadow behind them, the fog returned. It didn't roll in gently, like a blanket pulling over the lake. It appeared all at once, thick and absolute, the air turning white until there was no up, no down, no horizon. The world shrank to the circle of their boat, and the churn of the motor. Ethan cursed, gripping the wheel. We can't see 10 feet in front of us. Claire studied the compass bolted to the dash. Its needle spun wildly, north and south switching places every second. We just have to keep moving, she said, though her voice lacked conviction. Jonas sat hunched in the stern, his camera pressed to his chest. It's the same as the ferry, he muttered. Same fog, same lights. We shouldn't have left the island. But it was too late. The lake had them. Hours seemed to stretch. The fog distorted sound, every splash of water amplified. Every creak would echoing like a gunshot. Once, Ethan swore he heard another boat's engine, but when he throttled back and called out, there was no reply. Only silence. Then came the voice. At first, it was faint, like wind threading through the fog. Claire froze, straining to listen. Claire, her name, spoken in a whisper that was not Ethan's, not Jonas's. A voice both near and impossibly far. She turned sharply. Did you hear that? Jonas shook his head, eyes wide. Hear what? The voice came again, louder this time. Claire, come closer. Ethan's knuckles whitened on the wheel. Don't answer it. Claire's breath hitched. The sound carried a strange pull, as though it spoke not to her ears but directly into her mind. And then the lights appeared. Beneath the black water, faint orbs shimmered, glowed with an unearthly blue-green hue. They swirl beneath the boat in slow, deliberate arcs, casting pale light through the fog. For a moment, Claire thought of lanterns drifting in the dark, beautiful, almost serene. Then one surged upward, racing toward the surface. The boat rocked violently as the orb flared bright, illuminating the fog in a blinding flash. Jonas cried out, clutching his camera as though it might anchor him to the world. Ethan fought the wheel, shouting, "Hold on." The motor sputtered, then died. The lake fell silent except for the slap of waves. And in that silence, the voice returned, closer layered, as though dozens of mouths spoke in unison. Claire, Jonas, Ethan, all three froze. Jonas's teeth chattered. How does it know our names? The lights circled tighter, casting shifting shadows across the boat. Their glow revealed something beneath them, vast shapes, moving with terrible grace. Not fish, not machines, something else. Claire clutched her notebook, her hand trembling as she scrawled words she could barely see. Fog. Voice knows us. Light circling. Another impact struck the hull, harder this time. The boat lurched, nearly throwing him overboard. Ethan roared in frustration, slamming the starter, but the motor only coughed. The fog thickened, turning the world into a maze of shifting walls. Shapes flickered within it, tall, human-like silhouettes that dissolved when looked at directly. Jonas aimed his camera into the white void, whispering, "There are people out there. I can see them." But Claire knew better. Those weren't people. They were echoes or lures, or something worse. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life. Static hiss, then a fragment of voice. "AD vessel, trapped, pulled under." Jonas lunged for it. "This is Jonas Black. We're stranded in the fog. Can anyone hear us?" The reply came jagged, broken. "Lights, can't breathe, don't follow." Then silence. Claire's stomach dropped. That hadn't been a rescue call. It had been a recording, a fragment from someone else lost in the triangle, bleeding through time itself. The fog shifted again, parting for a moment, and there, impossibly close, a ship loomed. It wasn't moving. Its hull was blackened with rust, its deck listing to one side. No lights, no crew, just silence. Ethan's breath caught. That's impossible. That's the Rosabelle. Claire stared, heart-hammering. The schooner had vanished nearly a century ago. And yet, here it was, drifting silently through the fog, its sails shredded, its mast broken. As they watched, faint figures moved across its deck. Indistinct, flickering like shadows in candlelight. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the ship vanished back into the fog, leaving only darkness behind. Jonas clutched his camera, gasping, "Please tell me I filmed that. Please." The lake answered with another impact. This time the boat nearly capsized, water sloshing over the sides. Claire screamed as the lights surged upward again, encircling them like a noose. Ethan roared, slamming the starter with everything he had. The motor sputtered, coughed, and roared to life. "Hold on," he shouted, gunning the throttle. The boat lurched forward, cutting through the fog as the lights gave chase. For a moment, Claire thought they'd escape. The fog thinned, the air clearing, the stars flickering faintly above. But then the voice returned, louder than ever. "Claire." It wasn't a whisper this time. It was a command. She froze, her body moving against her will. Her notebook slipped from her hand into water. She leaned dangerously over the side, eyes locked on the glowing shapes below. Ethan grabbed her, yanking her back. "Don't listen to it." The lights pulsed, brighter, angrier, the water boiling around them. For a heartbeat, Claire swore she saw a doorway open beneath the lake, a corridor of light stretching downward, impossible in its geometry. And within it, shapes moved, vast and alien, beckoning her closer. Then, just as suddenly, it vanished. The fog shredded, scattering like torn cloth. The stars returned, cold and sharp above. The lake calmed, the lights gone. The three of them sat in silence, panting, drenched in sweat. Jonas's camera light blinked red, its battery drained. Ethan's hands trembled on the wheel. Claire stared into the dark water, her lips moving without sound. The lake was quiet again, But the silence was worse than the voices, because now they knew the truth. They weren't visitors in the triangle. They were prey. If you've made it this far into the mystery, you're the kind of person who doesn't look away when things get unsettling. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, because the deeper we go into the Lake Michigan Triangle, the stranger this story becomes. The lake was still, too still. Ethan kept the throttle steady, refusing to release his grip on the wheel. His arms ached, but he wouldn't let go. He didn't trust the calm. It felt staged, like the pause between a predator's inhale and strike. Jonas sat curled against the stern, his camera dead in his lap. His lips moved soundlessly, replaying what he'd seen through the fog. The ship was real. I filmed it. I filmed the Rosa Belle. He clutched the useless camera as though it could keep him tethered. Claire sat apart, staring at the dark water. Her notebook was gone, swallowed whole by the lake, but her mind replayed the words. Hallway of light. Voices. Compass malfunction. Every detail she had written was real. And now, the lake seemed to whisper the rest, its surface rippling with secrets. Ethan finally broke the silence. We're calling for help. He leaned over the radio, flicking it on. Static filled the airwaves, a hungry hiss that seemed almost alive. He twisted the dials, searching for a frequency that wasn't corrupted by the fog's interference. Then, a faint channel crackled open. This is Coast Guard Station Ludington, Channel 16. Identify. Ethan grabbed the mic. This is... He hesitated, then glanced at Claire. This is Research Vessel Argo. We're caught in heavy fog near Beaver Island. Request immediate guidance. Static swallowed the reply, but then a voice cut through. Copy, Argo. Fog reported across the lake tonight. Maintain heading southeast. Can you confirm passengers and condition? Jonas scrambled forward, nearly knocking Ethan aside. Condition? We're being hunted. The lights. There are things in the water. Ethan yanked him back, snarling into the mic. We've lost compass bearing. Mechanical issues. Request escort. A pause. Then the Coast Guard's voice again, calmer this time. Stand by, Argo. Dispatching patrol vessel. Jonas shook his head violently. No, you don't understand. By the time they get here, we'll be gone, just like the others. Claire leaned closer to the mic, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. Listen to me. This isn't just fog. There are anomalies in the water. We've seen lights, heard voices. Our names. You must have reports like this on record. Check your files. Another pause, this one longer. When the voice returned, it was quieter, strained. Repeat, Argo. Say again. But Claire knew they'd heard her. At Coast Guard Station Ludington, Petty Officer Daniel Rourke leaned back from the radio, frowning. The young watchstander beside him, Hayes, glanced nervously at the logbook. She said lights. Hayes asked. Rourke didn't answer immediately. His eyes lingered on the filing cabinet against the far wall. Top drawer, stamped with a faded red label. Incidents, triangle. He'd been told never open it, not unless ordered, not unless the calls matched the pattern. And now, a woman's voice had cut across the static, describing the exact phenomena sealed away in reports older than either of them. Rourke swallowed hard, leaned into the mic, and lied. Argo, this is Station Ludington. Repeat, fog is heavy but temporary. Stay on course. Patrol vessel en route. When he clicked off, Hayes whispered, Why didn't you tell them? If it happening again. Rourke's jaw clenched. Because the last crew that tried to tell someone never came back. Back on the lake, Ethan kept one eye on the fuel gauge, the other on the horizon. The fog hadn't lifted. It had only thinned, curling low like smoke waiting for the chance to thicken again. Jonas wouldn't stop pacing, muttering, They're not coming. They can't help us. Claire ignored him, scanning the water. Her heart pounded with each ripple, each gleam of moonlight that might have been something else. Then she saw it, a flare of light beneath the surface. Not faint this time. Bright, intentional. Ethan, she whispered. He followed her gaze and cursed. The lights had returned, 3 of them this time, circling fast beneath the boat. The water glowed with their passage. streaks of pale blue illuminating vast shadows below. The radio hissed again. A new voice cut through, jagged and panicked. "Day, this is the Mariner. Engines dead, fog closing in, we can't." A burst of static swallowed the rest. Jonas lunged to the mic. "This is Argo. We hear you, Mariner. Where are you?" No reply, only static. Then, faintly, a scream. The channel died. Claire's blood turned to ice. That hadn't been directed at them. They had eavesdropped on another ship, another crew caught in the same nightmare. Their mayday severed mid-breath. Ethan's knuckles were white on the wheel. "We're getting out of this fog. Now." But the lake had other plans. The first hit came from below. A jolt so strong it knocked Jonas to his knees. The boat groaned, its metal hull vibrating as though something massive scraped along its underside. The second hit nearly capsized them. Claire screamed as water poured over the edge. Ethan roared, throttling the engine, but the lights below surged faster, circling like wolves. The radio burst alive again, not with voices this time, with laughter. Claire froze. It was faint, distorted, but unmistakable. A chorus of laughter, human and not, woven with static. It carried a cadence that made her stomach twist, as if mocking their every move. Jonas covered his ears. "Turn it off. Turn it off." Ethan slammed the radio off the dash. But the laughter didn't stop. It echoed from the fog itself, bouncing across the waves, growing louder until the boat shook with it. Claire's voice cracked. "It knows we call for help." Then the laughter cut out, and silence fell like a blade. In that silence, the compass needle spun wildly again. The fog closed in tighter, walls of white swallowing the stars. And when Claire glanced at Jonas, she saw tears streaming down his face. "Someone's not making it back," he whispered. At Station Luddington, Rourke stared at the dead channel. Hayes was pale, shaking. "Sir," Hayes stammered. "That was the third one this year. We have to." But Rourke silenced him with a look. "You'll write the log. Weather interference. Vessel lost contact. Standard." Hayes hesitated. "And the survivors?" Rourke didn't answer. His eyes drifted again to the filing cabinet, to the word triangle, to the reports inside that told the same story, again and again. He whispered it to himself, too soft for Hayes to hear. No one survives twice. Back on the lake, the Argo drifted blind, trapped in the fog. The radio was dead. The compass was useless. Claire clutched Ethan's arm, whispering, "They heard us. They know our names. And now they're waiting." The lights flared again, brighter than ever, casting shadows of impossible shapes beneath the water. And then the boat stopped moving. The engine was still alive, roaring, the propeller churning the water. But the Argo didn't advance an inch. It was being held. The Argo shuddered like an animal caught in a snare. Its engine strained against an invisible grip, churning the lake into froth, but the boat held still. The fog pressed close on all sides, a solid wall of white. Ethan slammed the throttle forward until the motor screamed. Nothing. The water boiled, but the boat didn't move. Jonas clutched the rail, trembling. "We're not stuck. We're being held." Claire's breath came in shallow gasps. The lights circled below them, brighter than ever, tracing deliberate paths around the hull. She couldn't shake the image of jaws closing. "Cut the engine," she whispered. Ethan whirled on her. "Are you insane? If I cut it, we're dead." Claire shook her head. "It's already useless. We're burning fuel, making noise. That's what it wants." The motor coughed in protest, its metal body rattling. Ethan hesitated, then, snarling through his teeth, killed it. The sudden silence was worse. The lights slowed, their glow steady, patient. Beneath them, the water stirred with massive shapes, their outlines shifting like shadows too large to name. Jonas raised his camera with trembling hands. Forgetting it was dead, he whispered like a child saying a prayer. "Don't look at me. Don't look at me." Then the voice came, not from the fog this time, but from the lake itself, rising up to the hull, vibrating in the wood and steel. "Jonas." His name, drawn out like a lure. Jonas dropped the camera and staggered back. No, no, it's not real. But it came again. Jonas, with us. The water erupted. Something surged upward with explosive force, striking the hull. The boat bucked, nearly throwing them overboard. A slick, glistening appendage, neither fin nor tentacle but something between, slammed across the deck, splintering wood where it landed. Jonas screamed. Claire lunged, grabbing his arm, but the thing was faster. It coiled, wrapping around Jonas's leg with strength that bent bone. Ethan grabbed a flare gun from the emergency kit and fired without hesitation. The red streak hissed across the deck, striking the appendage. For a moment, the thing recoiled, shrieking in a sound that wasn't sound at all, an unholy vibration that made their teeth ache. But it didn't let go. Jonas's nails clawed into the deck as he was dragged toward the rail. His voice was hoarse, desperate. Don't let them take me. Don't let. The second flare missed, sizzling uselessly into fog. Ethan cursed, fumbling to reload. Claire threw herself across Jonas, locking both arms around his shoulders. Hold on, she screamed, tears burning her eyes. I've got you. But Jonas's face twisted in terror. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking past her, into the water. They're showing me, he gasped. His pupils were wide, black as pits. I see it. I see the city. What city? Claire demanded, pulling with all her strength. Jonas sobbed, half laughing, half choking. It's beautiful. Oh, God, it's beautiful. Then the appendage yanked. Claire's grip tore away. Jonas screamed once, a sound that cut into her marrow, before he was dragged over the rail and into the lake with splash that vanished too quickly. The water swallowed him whole. The lights flared blindingly bright and then dimmed. The fog pressed closer. The silence returned. Jonas was gone. Claire lay on the deck, clutching the empty space where Jonas had been. Her body shook with sobs that didn't sound like her own. Ethan stood frozen at the rail, flare gun hanging useless in his hand. His face was pale, his jaw clenched. He whispered, almost inaudible, I should have pulled harder. Claire shot him a glare so venomous it could have cut steel. Don't you dare blame yourself. This isn't us. It's them. She pointed at the water. The lights pulsed, faint but still circling, as if satisfied. Ethan forced himself to look down, his voice trembling. What did he mean? A city? Claire shook her head. The word replayed in her mind, echoing with Jonas's awe. Beautiful. But nothing about this was beautiful. She whispered. They showed him something to make him let go. Something he wanted to see. Ethan gripped the rail harder, veins bulging in his forearms. Then, they're not just dragging us under. They're choosing us. At Station Luddington, the radio crackled faintly, carrying broken fragments across the static. Help dragging. Jonas gone. Hayes bolted upright. That was them. Did you hear it? Rourke's face was gray. He leaned closer to the console, straining. The voice came again, weak and distorted. See it? City so beautiful. Then silence. Hayes swallowed. Someone's dying out there, sir. Rourke closed his eyes. He had heard this before. Different voices. Same words. Every report, every log in that cabinet had described it the same way. The lake didn't just drown its prey. It seduced them. He whispered to himself. The offering's been taken. Hayes paled. What do you mean, offering? Rourke didn't answer. He reached for the logbook, writing the entry in cold, steady letters. Vessel Argo, 3 aboard, 1 lost to the triangle. Back on the lake. Claire forced herself to her feet. Her body ached, her lungs burned, but she stood. They're not going to stop, she said. Her voice was raw, but her resolve was sharp. Not until they have all of us. Ethan wiped a hand over his face, smearing sweat and lake spray. His eyes were bloodshot, wild. Then we fight. Claire gave a bitter laugh. Fight? With what? Flares? Prayers. She pointed at the empty spot where Jonas had stood. We couldn't save him. What makes you think we can save ourselves? Ethan's jaw tightened. Because we're not giving them another. The lights pulsed once, as if in answer. Claire shivered. She could feel it, the hunger rising from below. Jonas hadn't been the end. He had been the beginning. And as the fog closed in tighter, she realized something worse than death. The triangle didn't want them gone. It wanted them to see. The silence after Jonas's disappearance was unbearable. The Argo drifted, a husk suspended between water and fog. Claire sat rigid on the deck, staring at the lake as though Jonas might claw his way back up, gasping for air. Ethan paced like a caged animal, flare gun still clutched in his fist, jaw working furiously with words he couldn't bring himself to speak. The lights below hadn't left. They lingered, glowing faintly beneath the surface, circling the boat with a patience that felt like triumph. Claire whispered, almost to herself, "He said it was beautiful." Ethan stopped pacing. Don't repeat it." But she couldn't stop. The word rolled off her tongue with a weight that wasn't hers. Beautiful. That's what he saw. Ethan knelt in front of her, gripping her shoulders hard enough to hurt. "Claire, listen to me. That wasn't Jonas talking. That was them. They put in his head." Her eyes flicked to his, hollow and burning. "Then why do I see it too?" Ethan froze. Claire swallowed hard, hands trembling. "When he was dragged under, I saw it for a moment. Towers. Lights like glass needles under water. They were glowing, beckoning, and for a second, I wanted to go with him." Ethan let her go as though her skin had turned to fire. He backed away, shaking his head. No, that's not real. It's the shock, Claire. It's trauma." But his own pulse betrayed him, because when he closed his eyes, he could almost picture it too, a skyline, impossible and radiant, shimmering deep beneath the waves. The fog shifted. Shapes loomed at its edge, massive shadows that looked like ships, hulks half seen, half formed. One moment they were there, the next dissolved into vapor. Claire stood shakily, clutching the rail. "Ethan, do you hear that?" He strained his ears. At first, only silence. Then music, faint, distorted, drifting up to the fog like a half-remembered dream. Strings and voices, mournful and alluring, carried across the water. Claire's chest heaved. "It's coming from down there." "No," Ethan snapped. "It's in your head." But then he heard it too. The melody swelled, weaving through the mist. It wasn't random. It was a hymn, notes rising and falling with deliberate grace, as though an unseen choir sang to welcome them. Ethan staggered back. Oh, God, it's real." The lights below pulsed in rhythm with the music. The circling shapes gathered tighter, faster, until the water beneath them churned with motion. And then, through the gaps in the waves, Ethan saw it. At first, just a glimmer, then a spire, then a whole skyline unfolding beneath the water. Towers stretched impossibly high, their surfaces crystalline, refracting pale light that seemed to come from the lake itself. Bridges arched between them like veins of glass. And between the structures, shadows moved, vast, slow shapes that could not be human. The city, Jonas's beautiful city. Ethan's throat went dry. His knees weakened. And against his will, a thought formed. I want to go there. Claire's hand shot out, clutching his wrist. Her grip was iron. Don't look at it too long. That's how they take you. But her own eyes betrayed her. She couldn't look away either. The city pulsed like a heartbeat. Each glowed brighter, stronger, until it lit the fog itself with pale blue veins. And beneath the hymn, beneath the lure, another sound rose. Whispers. They weren't distant now. They were inside. Claire's chest heaved as her own name slithered through her skull. Claire, come down. See it. Ethan stiffened, his jaw trembling. Ethan home. You belong. They staggered back from the rail, clutching their ears as though they could block it out. But the voices weren't in the air. They were in the marrow. Claire screamed, "Stop! Get out of my head!" The whispers ceased. The hymn died. Silence returned. But the city still glowed. Waiting. At Station Luddington, Hayes was sweating as he replayed the transmission they had caught only minutes earlier. He cranked the volume, letting the broken fragments hiss from the speakers. City glowing, so beautiful. Hayes turned to Rourke, his voice shaking. That's the third time tonight. 3 different voices. Always the same word. Rourke rubbed a hand over his face. Beautiful. Always beautiful. He remembered the old reports. Pilots who vanished mid-flight. Sailors who never returned. Their last logs described the same thing. A city beneath the lake. But no wreckage was ever found. No bodies. Nothing. Hayes whispered, "Sir, what if it's real? What if something's down there?" Rourke's eyes hardened. Then God help anyone who looks too long. On the lake, Claire and Ethan huddled in the wheelhouse, both pale and shaking. "They're showing us what Jonah saw," Claire whispered. "They want us to join him." Ethan rubbed his temples, fighting the lingering melody still playing in his head. "Then we don't look. We don't listen. We focus on getting out." But the compass still spun uselessly. The GPS blinked error codes. The fog hadn't lifted. Claire, clench your fists. What if it's not just a trap? What if it's something older? A city no one was meant to see? Ethan snapped his head toward her. "You sound like you want to believe it." Her lips trembled. "Don't you?" Ethan's silence was answer enough. They both sat there, breathing hard, while the glow beneath the water pulsed softly, like the heartbeat of something vast and waiting. Claire finally whispered, "We need to decide. Do we fight to leave? Or do we see what's down there?" Ethan's laugh was hollow, cracked. "One already made the choice for us." They didn't say Jonas's name. Then the boat lurched. The Argo tilted sharply to starboard, nearly throwing them against a glass. The circling lights flared brighter, pulling tighter around the hull. Claire gripped the edge of the console. "They're not waiting anymore." The whispers returned, louder now, filling every corner of the cabin. Come see. Come home." Ethan clutched his head, screaming, "Shut up. Get out of me." Claire's nails dug into her palms until they bled, fighting to pull the voices. She bit down hard, grounding herself with pain. But the images didn't stop. Through the fog of her mind, she saw it clearly. Jonas drifting peacefully downward, arms outstretched, as the city opened its glowing gates to him. His face wasn't twisted in terror anymore. It was calm, smiling, and then the vision shifted. Jonas turned his head and looked directly at her. His mouth moved. "Your turn," Claire screamed. The lights flared, the hull groaned, and the boat began to spin. The Argo spun in slow, sickening circles. The lake itself seemed to grip the boat, twisting it into the center of an unseen vortex. The fog churned overhead, clouds swirling like a lid tightening over the world. Claire clung to the console, her knuckles white. Every muscle in her body screamed for her to jump overboard, to flee, but she knew the water wasn't escape. It was invitation. Ethan fought with the controls, slamming the throttle forward, wrenching the wheel until his arms ached. The engine roared, the propeller churned, but it was like trying to sprint against a hurricane. The boat didn't move forward. It only spun faster. Claire shouted over the roar, "They're pulling us under!" Ethan's teeth were bared, his voice hoarse. "Not if I can fight it." But the compass spun. The gauges blinked. The GPS screamed errors. Every instrument betrayed them. The Argo was no longer a vessel. It was prey. Beneath them, the lights swarmed tighter. What had been gentle orbits became spirals, luminous chains drawing the boat downward. Between their glow, Claire caught glimpses of dark, titanic shapes brushing just beneath the surface. Once, she thought she saw an eye. A single lidless orb the size of a lifeboat, glimmering faintly, watching her. Her breath caught. "Ethan, it's alive." He didn't answer. His jaw clenched, sweat pouring down his temple. The boat lurched violently, and with a groan like metal under siege, the hull tilted. Water sloshed across the deck. The first wave crashed over the rail, soaking them to the bone. Claire staggered, screaming, "It's dragging us down." At Station Luddington, alarms were blaring. Hayes hovered over the radar screen, his voice cracking. "I've got them. 2 miles off course. They're spiraling." Rourke squinted at the screen. The marked Argo rotated in sickening loops, tighter and tighter, as though being wounded into the heart of something unseen. "God Almighty," Hayes whispered. "It looks like they're circling a drain." Rourke's hand clenched on the console. "Get a bird in the air. Now!" Within minutes, the thrum of a helicopter filled the night as a Coast Guard chopper lifted off into the fog, its searchlight spearing into the void. But the fog swallowed light whole. From the cockpit, the pilot's voice crackled through the radio. "Visibility's almost zero. We're flying blind." Rourke muttered under his breath. "They all say that." On the Argo, the hymn had returned. The voices rose through the fog, harmonizing with the storm, weaving into the crash of waves and the groan of steel. It wasn't music anymore. It was command. Descend, descend, descend. Claire clutched her ears until they bled. "I can't, Ethan. I can't block it out." Ethan slammed his fist against the wheel. "Fight it." But even he could hear Jonas in the chorus. His voice was clearer now, woven among the whispers. "It's not death. It's home. Come see." The fog pulsed with light, illuminating their faces in ghastly flashes. Claire's eyes were wide, bloodshot, fixed on the water. Through the spray and the glow, the city appeared again, closer this time. Towers of glass and stone, rising impossibly high, their spires glowing blue like beacons. Streets wound between them, filled with shadows that shifted, flickered, swam. And at the heart of it all, a vast, dark abyss where no light reached. Claire's breath shuddered out of her. "It's waiting for us." The boat dropped suddenly, as though the lake had opened beneath them. Claire was thrown against the wall of the cabin, the air driven from her lungs. Ethan barely clung to the wheel as the Argo sank into a trough of black water. The stern dipped, water spilling over the deck. The hull screamed in protest. "We're going under?" Ethan roared. The lights beneath surged upward, wrapping the boat in their glow. For a moment, it looked as though the lake itself had transformed into a vast, luminous stage, and the Argo was the centerpiece. Claire gasped. "They're not killing us, they're presenting us." Ethan's eyes widened. "To what?" The answer came in vibration, rather than sound. The water trembled, the air shook, and a shape stirred in the depths below. Claire saw it first, an outline too massive to comprehend, stretching beyond the reach of the glow. A bulk that dwarfed their vessel, dwarfing even ships she had seen in ports. The lake itself moved, and then the eye opened. A circle of pale blue light, large in the Argo's deck, stared up at them through miles of dark water. Claire collapsed to her knees, trembling violently. Her voice was a whisper. We were never lost. We were called. Above, the helicopter sliced through the fog, its searchlight spearing down. "Contact! Visual on a vessel," the pilot reported. Rourke leaned closer to the radio. "Is it them?" The pilot's voice faltered. "Sir, I don't know what I'm seeing." The searchlight passed over a patch of water where the Argo spun, tilted, halfway submerged. For a split second, the crew saw figures on deck, clutching each other as waves slammed across the boat. Then the light bent, not reflected, bent, as though the air itself warped around the vessel. Static exploded across the radio. The helicopter shook violently. The pilot's voice cracked through. "We're losing instruments." Pulling back. The transmission cut. On the deck, Claire crawled toward Ethan, her body shaking. She grabbed his face in both hands, forcing his eyes onto hers. "They're not going to let us leave." Ethan's breath came in ragged bursts. His eyes darted to the rail, to the city glowing beneath them. His body trembled, torn between flight and surrender. Claire shook him hard. "Listen to me. We have one choice. We either give ourselves up or we fight until this boat is nothing but splinters. What do you want?" Ethan stared into her eyes, jaw working. And then, with a grin set to his face, he growled, "We fight." Claire nodded. Her chest burned with terror, but his words anchored her. Then the lake surged again, lifting the boat high, higher, before dropping it like a stone. The city waited below, patient. The eye glowed brighter, and the Argo sank lower. The Argo groaned like a dying beast as the lake claimed it inch by inch. Water surged over the deck, flooding the wheelhouse, rising to their waists. Claire clung to Ethan, both of them gasping, choking on spray. The compass spun. The gauges cracked. The radio shrieked a final burst of static before going dark. And then the lake swallowed the world. The boat tipped nose first into black, pulled by unseen hands. Claire's lungs burned as the last gasp of night air was ripped from her. Ethan clutched her wrist with iron grip, his other hand scrabbling for anything solid. But there was nothing. The Argo sank. At first, there was only darkness. Water thundered into every crevice, dragging them deeper, deeper still. The weight crushed down on their chests, forcing panic into every nerve. Claire's vision dimmed until a glow ignited below. It started faint, like bioluminescence, then brighter, sharper, until the lake itself shimmered blue. The city rose from the depths. Towers of impossible height stretched toward them, crystalline and jagged, shimmering with veins of light. Archways opened like the jaws of colossal predators. Roads of stone and glass unfurled into shadow. Claire's scream never left her throat. It was stolen by the water. But her mind lit up with the chorus. Welcome. At last, the Argo struck something solid. The hull crunched, splintered, then came to rest on a platform of black stone. Claire and Ethan were thrown forward, smashing through glass, tumbling out into the cold embrace of the city itself. Yet, they did not drown. The moment their bodies hit the glowing water of the streets below, the burn in their lungs eased. The suffocating weight vanished. They gasped, not air, not water, but something between, a medium that filled their chests without killing them. Claire's eyes flew wide as she drew a shuddering breath. She floated in a cathedral of drowned light, lungs working where they should not. Ethan staggered beside her, chest heaving. This isn't possible. Claire whispered, we shouldn't be alive. And then a voice answered, not aloud, but inside their skulls. You are not alive, not as you were. Shapes emerged from the shadows. At first, human. Men and women drifting in the strange half-liquid air, their movements slow, graceful, their eyes shining faintly blue. Their skin was pale, their hair floating like seaweed, their faces calm, almost serene. Claire's heart stopped. Jonas! He was there, drifting toward them with arms outstretched, his face slack with peace, his lips curled into a faint smile. His eyes glowed with the same unnatural blue. Ethan pulled Claire back, his voice raw. That's not him. But Jonas spoke, and his voice was both inside their minds and echoing in the drowned air. It's me, and I'm free. Don't fight it, Claire. Don't fight them. It's better here. Claire trembled. Her chest ached with longing and revulsion in equal measure. He looked so calm, so whole, not the terrified man who had been dragged screaming into the dark, but something else, something claimed. Ethan snarled, You're not him. You're a puppet. Jonas tilted his head, his smile never breaking. Maybe, but I'm not afraid anymore. Neither will you be. Behind him, more figures gathered, dozens and hundreds, lining the glowing boulevards of the drowned city. Some wore sailors' coats from another century, others pilot uniforms. Some ragged civilian clothes half rotted away. Their eyes glowed, their mouths moved in unison. Stay, belong, forever. The city itself seemed to pulse with their chant. Claire staggered, clutching her head as the voices burrowed deeper. She saw visions. People stepping willingly into the lake, surrendering themselves to glow, smiling as they drifted down into the abyss. She saw ships breaking apart above, not destroyed, but delivered here as offerings. She saw planes spiraling into fog, only to be caught gently by unseen hands and lowered into this glowing graveyard. It wasn't random. It was ritual. Ethan roared, shaking Claire by the shoulders. Don't look at it. Don't listen. But she couldn't stop. The city was inside her now. Its glow was in her veins, its pulse in her heart. It's beautiful, she whispered. Ethan's face twisted with rage and fear. That's not you talking. That's them. Her eyes brimmed with tears. But what if they're right? What if this is what we're meant for? A shadow moved from the abyss beneath the city. Something vast stirred. The glowing towers dimmed as though bowing in reverence. The blue-eyed throng parted, kneeling in the drowned streets. The thing rose. It was not a creature in the way Ethan's mind could understand. It had no form that held steady. One moment, it was a serpent coiled around the city's spires. The next, a column of light with tendrils unfurling in every direction. Then a face, human, alien, colossal, its features shifting faster than thought. But always, always the eye, that enormous blue eye, burning through every form, fixing on them. Claire collapsed, clutching her chest as her mind buckled. Her vision swam. She felt herself peeling apart, piece by piece, as though her identity were a fragile shell being cracked open. The voice came again, vast and final. "You are mine." Above, in the helicopter, the Coast Guard crew screamed into static. "Sir, we've lost them. They're gone." The vessel just disappeared beneath the water. Rourke's voice broke over radio. "Did you see survivors? Did you see anyone?" The pilot hesitated. His voice was a whisper. We saw lights. A city under the lake. And people. Hundreds of them." Then static swallowed the channel. Rourke sat in silence, his face ashen. Hayes whispered, "What do we tell their families?" Rourke stared out at the black horizon. "We tell them the lake took them." In the drowned city, Claire and Ethan knelt before the eye. Jonas's glowing hand rested gently on Claire's shoulder. "It doesn't hurt anymore. It's peace." Ethan's hands balled into fists. "I don't want peace. I want the truth." The eye widened and the drowned choir roared. And then the city itself began to open. Bridges split, towers shifted, streets parted like the petals of a monstrous flower, revealing a pit of darkness at its core. The abyss called to them. Claire's body trembled, her will tearing in two. One part screamed to flee, to fight, to live. The other whispered to surrender, to drift, to dissolve into the glow. Her lips parted, and she whispered one. The drowned city pulsed like a heart, its towers bending, its streets yawning open. The abyss at its core deepened until no bottom could be seen. The choir swelled, their blue-lit faces turned upward, voices trembling in perfect harmony. "Descend, descend, belong." Claire's hand slipped from Ethan's. Claire, Ethan, and Jonas stepped into the unknown and vanished into a chapter of the Triangle's legend that may never close. But there are more stories like theirs, buried in the dark corners of history, waiting to be told. Subscribe now, and join me the next time we peel back the surface of a mystery that refuses to stay hidden. "Don't," he rasped, eyes wide with horror. "Claire, look at me. That's not you. That's them." Her eyes shimmered faintly blue now, her lips trembling. "Ethan, it's so easy here. No more fear. No more pain." She drifted toward Jonas, her movements dreamlike, her hair floating around her face like a halo. Jonas reached for her hand, his smile radiant, his skin glowing with that unnatural light. Ethan lunged, grabbing her wrist. "Claire, don't you dare. Don't you dare leave me." But the voice thundered inside his skull, vast and final. "She is not leaving. She is coming home." The ground beneath them shifted. The platform cracked, splintering into glowing shards. Claire stumbled, falling into Ethan's arms. For a moment, her eyes cleared, fear shining through the haze. I don't want to die," she whispered. Ethan clutched her face, his own breaking. "Then fight it. Fight them." But already the glow surged back, drowning the fear. Her pupils drowned in blue. She kissed his forehead, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry." And then she tore herself free. The abyss opened wider. Claire stepped off the platform, drifting into the pit like a bride walking down an aisle. Jonas and the others followed, hands reaching, eyes glowing, their voices rising until the city itself quaked with song. Ethan screamed until his throat bled. "Claire." But the water pulled her down, her body glowing brighter with every foot she sank. The abyss swallowed her whole, until she was nothing but a point of light vanishing into the dark. The choir went silent, and the eye turned to Ethan. It was enormous, filling the void, its pale blue iris vast enough to consume him. It locked onto his trembling form and pressed it into his mind. Join, or be erased. Ethan staggered backward. His chest heaved, his mind shredded under the weight of its gaze. His thoughts fractured. One half wanted to dive, to end the struggle, to belong. The other half, bloody and raw, still screamed for air, for sunlight, for freedom. He spat into the glowing current. Go to hell. The city shrieked. The towers groaned, collapsing inward. The drowned citizens writhed, their faces contorting in rage. Jonas's smile finally broke into a snarl. The abyss opened wider, surging upward like a black tide. Ethan turned and ran. He ran through streets of shattered glass, across bridges cracking beneath his weight. Hands reached for him, clutching, glowing, whispering. He tore free again and again, his body breaking, his lungs burning. He didn't know where he was going. There was no sky here, no exit, only endless corridors of drowned light. But then he saw it, a shaft of gray above, faint but real, the surface. Ethan screamed with everything left in him and clawed upward. His legs burned, his chest ripped, but he swam harder than he had ever moved in his life. Behind him, the eye blazed brighter, and the city rose after him, towers stretching like claws, tendrils of light whipping upward to drag him back. The choir howled. No one leaves. No one leaves. Ethan burst through the surface. He gasped, retching, pulling in ragged gulps of night air. The fog wrapped around him, but it was different now, thin, dispersing. The lake lay still, glassy, as though nothing had happened. The Argo was gone. The city gone. Claire gone. Only Ethan remained, clinging to a piece of driftwood, half dead but alive. A spotlight struck him, blinding. Survivor! A voice roared over a loudspeaker. We've got him! The helicopter descended, and arms reached down, hauling him aboard. Ethan collapsed on the floor, shaking, water streaming from his body. His eyes darted wildly, searching the lake, desperate for one last glimpse. But the water was empty. The drowned city had vanished. 2 weeks later, Ethan sat in a hospital room, pale and hollow-eyed. The press had swarmed him. The Coast Guard had questioned him. But none of it mattered. He told them everything, the fog, the voices, the lights, the city. He told them Claire was still down there, that she had chosen it. They nodded, humored him, then marked severe trauma in their reports. The Coast Guard released a statement. The Argo was lost in a sudden storm. One survivor, Ethan Hale, recovered. No bodies recovered. Case closed. But Ethan knew better. At night, he still heard the hymn, soft at first, then rising, until the walls of his room vibrated with the sound. He saw Claire's face in every reflective surface, her eyes glowing blue, her lips whispering, "Come back." The doctors called it hallucination. Ethan knew it was invitation. On the shore of Lake Michigan, just past midnight, a man was seen standing at the water's edge. His hospital bracelet still clung to his wrist, his feet bare, his eyes hollow. Witnesses say he stepped into the waves without hesitation. No one ever saw him again. Weeks later, fishermen swore they saw lights beneath the lake. Some said it was a city. Others said it was a single enormous eye, staring upward. But all agreed on one thing. The triangle had claimed another. Claire, Ethan, and Jonas stepped into the unknown and vanished into a chapter of the triangle's legend that may never close. But there are more stories like theirs, buried in the dark corners of history, waiting to be told. Subscribe now, and join me the next time we peel back the surface of a mystery that refuses to stay hidden.